Kurt, we are here. The finals have been set. Golden State versus Boston. Let's talk about Golden State first and foremost. Did you expect this?
No, I thought it was possible, right? Like we talked about, like their potential was this, but they didn't really. I mean, Curry was great all season or most of the season when he was healthy, but Draymond got hurt. Thompson came in midway through the season. There was a lot of question about like, were they going to be able to build up to this? I mean, the potential was there, but I guess the question was like, was the chemistry baked in enough for them to be able to get here? And yeah, turns out I think it was, Corey.
Yeah, I think there's this short-term memory loss that we've experienced because it's not like the other teams that, like, for instance, this very season, 76ers, who similar, like, injection of James Harden, MVP caliber player in mid-season. Would the chemistry work? The answer was no. The Brooklyn Nets, would the chemistry work? The answer was no because of all the injuries. But the thing that separates the Golden State Warriors from the 76ers and the Nets is that this team is one of the best dynasties in basketball, period, in the whole history of the game. And all these guys have been playing with each other for like a decade. So it's almost like what's one or two seasons off, compared to, as far as chemistry is concerned, compared to the Nets or compared to the 76ers. And I feel like even I kind of forgot that, Kurt, where I'm like, wait a second, like, are they going to fix it? Are they going to fix it? And I'm like, wait a second, these guys have been to like 5 straight finals just a couple years ago.
And they were able to meld in young talent with that. That was the other thing that, like, I really wasn't worried about, like, Clay and Steph and Draymond knowing how to kind of raise their game at the last minute. But would Poole, would Wiggins, would all the guys, Looney, all the guys that they've kind of leaned on have really come through in the playoffs, right? Like, Wiggins had this amazing series with – I almost feel bad for Wiggins because it was like, hey, you did such a good job on Luka Doncic. We would like you to meet Jason Tatum. Like, hey, welcome to the NBA.
That's the whole thing. That gets you excited, right? I mean, I was listening to the sit down between Isaiah Thomas and Steph and Clay, and they were all sitting, and I remember Klay Thompson was saying, "Oh man, I love getting that number one assignment. I love that challenge," and that was what piqued his interest. And Steph was like, "That doesn't pique my interest," but some people love that.
Yeah, and he's risen to the challenge, right? And he's going, and if they're going to win this, he's got to again. I mean, they have to contain Jason Tatum to a degree, right? Tatum's a great player, and he's going to get his, and we'll talk more about it. But like, there's a lot on Wiggins. There's a lot on the role players. Getting Gary Payton the second back is big, even if it's 15 minutes a night. If you get 15 minutes of quality defense off the bench in a series where points are going to be hard to come by, like adding another defender like that is a big plus.
Yeah, I want to draw your attention to this analogy. At least I think of when I think about this Warriors team, because you mentioned the young talent. I kind of see it. I kind of see it like a track meet, Kurt. And I remember when I was studying track, I worked on this one track meet, and the thing that I loved hearing about from track athletes, it's like, okay, well, where are we in the season? I want to peak at the right time because you can't go 100% all season long. Or else when it comes down to Olympic trials, for instance, you're not going to be ready. So it's really interesting to see the mentality of like, I'm going to ramp up and I want to do 80% here or 75% there or 90% here. And I'm going to go back and scale back a little bit and train more, rest, and then I'll be 100% when it matters most. That's kind of how I see this Warriors team working. There was this one track meet where Sydney McLaughlin, she was way behind everyone. And I thought, whoa, what's going on? And then at the post-race interview, she said, I did the whole thing with my off leg. I didn't want to do this race, the hurdles with my dominant leg because I'm training. This whole race for me, this whole meet is just training. So she was fine coming in last place because she was doing it on her off leg. And then, she went and did very well in the Olympics. So I think that's kind of the same concept with me. I'm like, okay, when I see this Warriors team, the past 2 seasons with an injured Steph and an injured Clay gave players like Jordan Poole the chance to get some run. And that was like the Warriors running on their off leg. So yeah. Everyone was back together. Then it's like, okay, we're ready to go.
It is a big picture issue for the league, though, right? Because if this is what LeBron James did in Cleveland, right? He coasted through parts of the regular season so that he knew what he had to carry come the postseason for those teams. Kawhi Leonard gets a lot of flack, and obviously he was injured this year, but he had a lot of load management issues. But those teams are looking at exactly what you're saying. If you want to play now and peak now, you can't burn yourself out in December and January. And it's a balance for the league to figure out how to have those players playing in the meat of the season. By the way, when you're making your money, right? Like that's when the buildings are filling up and the people who's got to be watching, getting people to tune in and not treat the regular season like it doesn't matter. Because if the players do, the fans will, right? And so they've got to find a balance there somehow.
And then you look at, well, in the Warriors case, they have a lot of space, really, like you said. They have space to kind of figure this out because they're a dynasty and they have time. They know that you don't have one bad season, your coach is going to get fired, or they're going to break up the band. Whereas other teams, when you have super teams or teams that don't have that kind of time horizon for whatever reason, the fan pressure or front office pressure or ownership pressure or in team fighting, then you have that problem compounded, Kurt. And it's like, okay, well, how are you going to win in one season and the band's going to break up because of it's like, and we want to rest half the season. And I think we're seeing that all over the league, and it doesn't work. The only time it works is if you have the alignment long term, and that's just rare.
By the way, credit Boston for not falling prey to that pressure, right? How much talk was there midseason about Tatum and Brown can't play together, and maybe is Udoka the right coach, and what do they need to break up and change on this team because we're below 500 at Christmas? They stuck with the bigger picture, and here they are. They saw where they wanted to go, didn't become prisoners of the moment, right? Like powered through that to now, like you're not talking about that. You're talking about how many of these can they be back in over the next few years.
But so what unlocked for them?
First off, they just got healthy. Remember, Jalen missed time at the start of the season. So part of it was just getting healthy, but also Brad Stevens is out. Udoka is in as the coach. You're changing your system. You're shaking things up from how it had been. A couple new players in there. Doing all that, I think with the injuries, it just took time for them to gel. And I also think part of it is at some point, Jason Tatum, I mean, he had this in him. He looked great in the Olympics, but there was a moment where he decided he had to be that guy. He had to be it because it was he was good in the first half, but the second half of the season, he was MVP. I mean, he came in sixth, I think, in MVP voting, but he was an MVP ballot worthy kind of guy the second half of the season. I think everything just kind of came together at the right time for them.
There's this saying we have in San Antonio where, you pound the rock. So the idea is, there's this rock and you're hitting it over and over and over again, and it may not crack for 999 times, but the 1,000th time it shatters. And that's kind of what I feel like what happens in Boston is Jason Tatum's been doing things that put him on a short list with Boston Celtics legends, like 50-point performances. I mean, just like absolutely gorgeous basketball. But he wasn't bringing the rest of his team with him. And how could you expect a guy to do that? He was in his early 20s, balling, right? It takes people years to figure out how to become a leader and take everyone up with you. I think one of the things, in addition to the light changes around where Brad Stevens then goes into the front office, you still have that continuity. You bring in Ime Udoka, who comes in, has that fresh vision, but it's still within the sphere of the Boston Celtics is, and as an organization, this is what we have been doing, and this is where we're going towards. And then you still have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, but you're just kind of filling in around that. But Marcus Smart has elevated his game this past season. Unbelievable. Defensive Player of the Year, right? Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum continuing to trade the load, and I've really been impressed by Jalen's progression over the past couple of years. I was one of those people, Kurt, who said, I don't know if they can play together, because I didn't know it was going to be like a rerun of the Oklahoma City team where you had Westbrook, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. All three guys like Finals MVP. Can you still play together? And they weren't able to get it done. They went to the finals too, right?
Yes, they did.
So my point is, with this Celtics team, the jury is still out. But the way that they were able to be patient through all of that, like you said, I really think that's, while still maintaining the continuity, is really brilliant. Jason Tatum's done a great job of bringing everyone else along with him.
Right. He has improved his playmaking, right? I mean, that was the knock on him earlier in his career, is that, look, he was wearing the 24 armband during Game 7, right? He is mentored by Kobe, worked out with Kobe, inspired by Kobe. But there were times that Jason took a lot of criticism because he did the very Kobe thing of, my shot over this triple team is better than passing, right? Like there was a little too much of that. And by the way, if your pass was to Smush Parker, then yeah, Kobe should shoot over the triple team. But Kobe learned how to, hey, I've got to trust Pau Gasol. I got to trust Derek Fisher. I've got to on and on. Obviously Shaq and a host of other veterans that were there. He trusted those guys. I think Tatum got to that point now where you see his playmaking is much better. When the double hits him, he finds guys and is there secondary playmaking with Brown and a bunch of guys. Robert Williams can put balls in around the basket, right? Like they've got a lot of guys who can finish. It just makes them so much more dangerous.
I think the key word is trust there, and you're right on. Like when Kobe, I remember him talking about his children's books that he wrote, and I was watching the video, and he was saying that was one thing that from personal experience, I learned how to trust the people around me, right? And that is hard to do when you are brilliant, when you're a brilliant basketball player, right? When the game comes, very easily for you, and this is, what you do. Like Jason Tatum's brilliant, like he's one of the best players in the world. Sometimes there can be a gap from the brilliant master and everyone else who doesn't understand that as clearly, so that's when you have to communicate your vision in a very clear way that can inspire people to buy into that. And that's why let's go to another mentor. We're going away. This is like crazy meta. We're going to another thing where Kobe was mentored by Bill Russell. And that's one of the things that Bill Russell understood, Kurt, is he said, look, I don't care. Winning is the most important. So what role do I have to take? Is Kuzi the guy or am I the guy? I'm fine being this number 2 on this team. If it's Kuzi's team, like whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And when Bill Russell's doing that, and when Kobe's doing that, and when Jason Tatum's doing that, it leads to championships.
I still think maybe the vintage Kobe moment was the Olympics in, I think, 2008, where he goes up to Mike Krzyzewski first day of training camp and goes, I just want your toughest defensive assignment every game. I'm going to go lock people down. We got everybody who can score. I'm not worried about the guys getting buckets on this team. Make me the defensive stopper. Like that attitude wins you titles. And I think both of these teams have players who bring that.
And the one I want to take you back to Game 7 because this series, the Celtics, the rematch versus the Heat, there was this moment where it kind of reminded me. I remember the bubble, that image, that iconic of Jimmy Butler leaning over the side, giving it everything. Same kind of thing. He went down. He willed his team back into this game, back into this series, and it came down to what some would consider questionable decision making when he pulled up for a 3. What did you think about that final sequence?
That's Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is not going to go for hey, maybe if I drive, I can tie the game and extend it. First off, you see how exhausted they were? Like, I don't know that the Heat come out of that overtime with a win, but beyond whether he should or shouldn't have attacked, that's just, you're asking Jimmy Butler not to be Jimmy Butler. You're asking Jimmy Butler to play it safe. And he got a clean look at he walked up into a 3 earlier in the game and it hit it. He missed some. Also, look, he's not a great 3-point shooter. But who Jimmy Butler is like, hey, I've got a clean look at a 3 to win this thing. I'm taking it. And to the idea that, hey, maybe he could drive and get an old-fashioned 3-point play and draw a foul. Al Horford's a really good defender, man. Al Horford was causing problems all series. Like, that wasn't a sure thing either. I just don't think you can. The Jimmy Butler that got you to that shot is the Jimmy Butler who has to take that shot, right? Like I don't think he can be anybody else.
What about the Max Strus 3 that was overturned?
It looks to Heat fans will hate this. It looks to me like his foot's on the line, right? Like from the angle, it's tough to tell. I think the problem, and I think Spoelstra's point is valid here. There was 2.5 minutes of game time and more than 5 minutes of real time before they pulled that off the board. That they fought back. Then I think they got within 2 or 3. Miami pushed it back up. Boston pushed it back up to 8, and suddenly they take 3 off the board and a couple of free throws, and suddenly it's 13 again. And the emotions of getting out of that depth. I'm like, we were right in this, and now we're suddenly down 13 again. Was a big blow, and I think he's right that if the league is going to review all these, A, make sure you've got really good camera angles. B, it's just got to be quicker. You just can't wait 5 minutes of real time. Doesn't it seem to you like that? I mean, we complain about that in football, right? That the replays take too long.
In tennis, recently Iga Swiatek and Jessica Pegula, we saw the same thing, didn't we? Where it looked like it was double bounce, but the referee didn't see it. And then Pegula is looking at her, Pegula, sorry, is looking at her coach. Like, wait, what happened? Turns out that the referee missed the call, and then Iga Swiatek went on to win 5 straight games, I think it was. You know, and it's like, so when you think about the just the sheer momentum, because sports is all about momentum, right? And especially basketball. Basketball is a game of runs. So that is a very interesting point, Kurt.
Yeah, I think they've got to be. I appreciate the desire to. I guess they review every. I guess they review every 3. It's just got to be faster. It's just you can't. If you do that a minute later, fine, but 5 minutes later, it just changes the flow too much.
So now Thursday, finals, game 1. I am curious, Kurt, what do you expect to see in this first game?
First off, what a fun series this is going to be, because I think this doesn't get talked about. We talk about how great Boston's defense is. The Warriors were second in the league in defense. They only got passed midseason by Boston. Like, these are 2 elite defenses. Points are going to become hard to come by. So I think here's the 2 stats I'm really watching. First off, fast break / transition points. Because points are hard to come by, both teams are going to be looking to get points, especially the Warriors, right? I mean, that's where the Warriors are most dangerous. They get a couple of turnovers. Jaylen Brown gets sloppy with his handle again. I mean, Jason Tatum had 7 turnovers, and it was a game 6. Like, you do that against the Warriors, you give up those. Look, that 11-0 run Miami had, that's a 17-0 run against the Warriors, right? Like, you let them get out in transition, let guys run to the arc, let them run those little wide action pin down things, and boom, you're suddenly just, the momentum's crazy. Curry's hitting 35-footers, and you're buried before you know what you do. And I think the reverse is true in the first quarter of Game 7, how much better Boston looked when they could run on Miami, right? Like, if both of these teams could use the transition points, the easy buckets, so turnovers / transition points. The other thing I'm watching, this is they're first and second in the league in fewest percentage of opponent shots at the rim. These are teams that did not let you get to the rim, and they just didn't let you get to the rim, not just not finish there. They kept your shots out of the restricted area. If one of those teams starts breaking that down, if suddenly the Warriors are getting to the rim or the Celtics are getting to the rim and finishing there, it's a sign of much bigger problems. And it's kind of something I'm going to watch just to see which team is actually getting shots inside in the paint and making that happen. What do you look for? What do you expect out of this?
I think those are all very good points, Kurt. To add a little color as well, you know, from my perspective, I am really interested to see Andrew Wiggins. I think he's one of the X factors. I think the X factor is Jordan Poole.
Yes.
In my personal opinion. But Andrew Wiggins, I think, he kind of reminds me of like a Scottie Pippen, Kurt. You know, like, you remember like those Bulls teams, like Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, how they were just long and athletic. You know, they're like always in every passing lane and any ball around the rim. It's like, you know, it's just that's kind of how I feel about Andrew Wiggins. And if he's confident, I feel like with him, it's just an issue, like a confidence thing. You know, so if he's very confident this series, I think that would bode well for the Warriors. And, you know, like I said, I think Jordan Poole is the critical X factor, because just think about it, like, okay, you may stop Curry, which you know you're not, but like, let's say you limit Steph. Let's say you limit Clay, who just had 32 points recently, and he's rested, and Curry's rested. So it's like, well, that's probably not going to happen as much. Draymond's going to give you a 10-7-7 score, you know, stat line. But he's going to get everyone else involved, make sure Clay gets in a rhythm early, make sure Steph feels comfortable in a rhythm early. What are you going to do with Jordan Poole? That's like your 4th defender, you know? Like, so that's kind of that's where I'm looking at it from the Warriors perspective. From the Boston Celtics perspective, I'm just curious to see the one word I think about is discipline, Kurt, because this team, they're coming off a 2-7 series. They're tired, you know, they're not as rested as the Warriors are. And the one thing I don't like about Boston is that at times they just have a total breakdown of like discipline, and they make bad decisions, you know. And it's funny to me, and you could just see the body language too, where they make that extra pass that they shouldn't have made, you know, or they shoot that shot. And it's like, well, why did you do that? Like, just trust the process. Like, we don't need to force anything. And I think that's just you know, chalk it up to them being young, and that's where I think Al Horford, you know, has a huge part, you know, a huge benefit of that team. But when they have a lack of discipline, Boston scares me a little bit, and that what allows a team like, you know, the Bucks, which are excellently coached, and the excellently coached, and the Miami Heat, who were excellently coached, to take them.
Yeah.
The Warriors are also excellently coached. So.
You hit on my two big X factors, though, in this series. And to me, Jordan Poole is the guy to watch. Like you said, he's that fourth scoring option. Boston's advantage is that Golden State has always struggled traditionally with more switchy defenses, right, where they just switch everything. Boston switches everything in part because all five defenders, when their starters are out there, are good. And so one of the things I think is a key is just health. How healthy is Marcus Smart? Maybe more importantly, how healthy is Robert Williams? Because the drop off from Robert Williams, with even if whether you're playing Al Horford at center and then going smaller, or you're bringing in Daniel Theis, it's a drop off. Like, they need Robert Williams out there, and the guy who could close out and block threes in the corner like he did last series. That guy changes games. Is he healthy enough to do that with his knee? I mean, he gets 3 days off, and there's a little more spacing in the finals, but can he be that guy? But the other one is Jordan Poole, and you mentioned it. He's the fourth scorer. He's the X factor off the bench, but he's also their weakest defender. And Boston is going to go at him. If I'm the Celtics, the second he steps on the floor, he is in every pick and roll. I'm going to try to play him off the floor. I'm going to try to make him unplayable in this series because we can attack him defensively. I'm going to go at Curry a little bit just to wear him out. He's not as bad a defender as some people seem to think he is. He's competent, but I'd like to wear him out a little bit. I'm going to test Klay Thompson's mobility. But at the end of the day, if Jordan Poole's out there, I'm going to run at him until I get him off the floor for that reason. If he's a spark and puts up 18, 20 points, it becomes really hard to beat that team.
Yes, it does. I think for Boston's X factor, if I had to choose one, it might be Al Horford. The way that he's played this playoffs, I mean, it's been sensational, quite frankly. And it actually brought me a glimpse of way back. I remember when Kyrie Irving was on Boston, and you saw like Jalen and Jason kind of emerge as the guys in the playoffs, and Al Horford was just, I was like, man, this could be kind of special. And we're seeing it now play out. So I know that Boston has guys who can come off the bench and score. Like, I know that Peyton Pritchard can get you 18 if you need it. You know, that like Williams can get you 18 or 27 if you need it. You know, and that's great. So I know that they have options down the line. But if Al Horford is consistently, not just like I'm going to give you 27 one game, but, you know, if he does what he's been doing, where it's like, man, this guy is consistently giving them production in an explosive kind of way, I think that could change the series a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.